Have you ever clicked on your phone's camera and unexpectedly found it in selfie mode? Those accidental selfies are a far cry from the posed and filtered images we post to our feeds. Our very real reflections, flaws and all, feel out of place in the airbrushed version of reality that surrounds us, and that comparison can consume us if we're not careful. We have to start recognizing the filters and airbrushing for what they are, a distorted, false reality that warps the truth of who God made us to be. And this false reality problem isn't new. Brokenness and body shame didn't start with Instagram, Snapchat, or TikTok. Our warped understanding of God and His creation, including ourselves, has its roots in the fall of the first man and woman way back in Genesis. The fall wasn't just a bad decision made by Adam and Eve. It was a rejection of God. Because God is the source of truth and life, when humanity rejected Him, lies and death became a part of our reality. Instead of fleeing from darkness and empty promises, we were drawn to them. Our gaze bent toward idols and ourselves, and we began to believe lies about ourselves and others. Paul describes how a rejection of God threw humanity into confusion. In Romans chapter 1, he writes, "Yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship Him as God or even give Him thanks, and they began to think up foolish ideas of what God was like. As a result, their minds became dark and confused. Claiming to be wise, they instead became utter fools. And instead of worshiping the glorious, ever-living God, they worshiped idols made to look like mere people and birds and animals and reptiles. So God abandoned them to do whatever shameful things their hearts desired. As a result, they did vile and degrading things with each other's bodies. They traded the truth about God for a lie. So they worshiped and served the things God created instead of the Creator Himself, who is worthy of eternal praise. When humanity rejected God, their thinking became twisted, their hearts became dark, and the infinite value of the human body was degraded. Instead of seeing each individual as a masterpiece, a unique reflection of God's character, lovingly designed, people exploited one another's bodies for their own personal pleasure. And even though Paul wrote these words a long time ago, we still see this exploitation playing out in our media culture today. It seems like a hopeless situation, but it isn't. For those of us who trust in Christ, we are experiencing salvation from the darkness of a fallen world. You may hear the term salvation and think the one and done decision you made to follow Christ. But the world is richer and deeper than that. Salvation in English comes from the root word salve, which means healing. Salvation in Christ is about our nature being healed from the sickness of sin. It's an ongoing process of Jesus making us whole as He restores us to the life and truth we have only in God. But even as Jesus is making us whole, we still feel the effects of sin. We do have flaws, weaknesses, sicknesses, and more, but those flaws aren't our defining characteristic. They don't control us or dominate our hearts and minds. Instead, they move us to lean more on God's strength and perfection. Instead of being left hopeless, we are filled with hope as we see God's ongoing work in our lives and await the day that all will be made perfectly whole.